You know, it's interesting, actually. I was reflecting on it this morning. The feedback from the event, actually, it just shows how when you are actually channeling power from the sun, and we're going to go into where the sun and the agents of the sun, who they are. But when you're actually power, things flow. Things flow. And the manifestation of the event we had over there in San Francisco, landmark, iconic building, right? It's called Shack 15. And over there, you had Bloomberg, you have LinkedIn Live, you had, investors, entrepreneurs, inventors, thought leaders, billionaires, advisors, consultants, bankers, corporate, charity, philanthropy, grant persons. And at that event, which we had a fireside chat over there, it was interesting to see how the preparation of the event was smooth. The execution of the event was smooth. Everybody that participated in the event was excited, passionate, enthusiastic. You met the coordinators from the community. You met the corporate sponsors. You met my staff over there at the bank. And all of the persons, the professionals from the bankers, the consultants, the human resource people, the event coordinators, they were all just excited. They were naturally, and it was so smooth.
Interested and receptive.
They were receptive. And it wasn't something that was a monopoly of yoga, or it wasn't something about religion. It wasn't a quote-unquote kirtan fest, or an arti, or showcase of this or that. It was very much what I thought about this morning was the Radha Krishna Temple album, right? When the Beatles did the Radha Krishna Temple album, it just ran smoothly. It was just magic. And what that did for 2-3 decades, the cultural revolution that created, that was vibrant, that was empowered, that was coming right from Prabhupada. And as a result of the event now, what's happening is now we got Forbes reach out to us. The United Nations is reaching out, inviting us to go to New York. We have facilities in Washington, D.C., in Philadelphia, the University Club in New York City, the Union Club in Philadelphia, Art Basel in Miami. They're all inviting us to then continue this theme of what? Wisdom traditions, sages and kings, mentorship, teaching, academy, the role of guru, empowerment, to a guru and empowerment, or guru to overrule and power over. So I wanted to kind of like just chat about the power of the sun, who the sun is, how things flow, and in the time of Prabhupada and Gurudev, things were just flowing, and when you're in that channel of power, it just, things manifest, magic manifests.
There's a rightful, I would say, separation of church and state. However, spiritual leaders or our teachers aren't only there to give spiritual lessons and messages, they're actually leaders of society, traditionally, in the Vedic tradition. And so, speaking about the sun, when you were asking the questions, I mentioned that the sun is someone who empowers. It's a symbol of power, but really it's because he empowers. The sun empowers. And it gives energy to all beings, not just people of a religion or a faith. The sun doesn't discriminate, oh, you're a good person or a bad person. He just gives energy. And so spiritual leaders aren't just there to impact their congregation, to serve their congregation. I think we become too insular within our own group, and we don't recognize often that our service isn't just confined to that. There's a greater need for service in the role of a Swami or a Guru, and that doesn't mean just telling them how to adopt our faith. We can serve in the world, the needs of the world, and those who are interested in our faith can also join. But there's a service that we can offer and provide in the needs of society that doesn't simply cater to those members of our faith, nor simply is it about converting people to our faith by going out there. We're not going out there to an event to convert people. We're going there to share it from our wisdom tradition in a way that can positively impact people's lives across traditions.
Well, how Gurudev did over there in England with the different faiths and the whole Way of Love book that came out of those lectures in a similar fashion. Gurudev was a messenger of what? In that role of love and peace, and he was honored as such, right?
Ambassador for peace.
Ambassador for peace, that was it, in England. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of, because I was talking with Rasik Maharaj earlier, and we were discussing how, where's the outreach, and devotees can be quite insular, but I don't necessarily have a problem with that. So I was thinking, since we had that conversation, the club you're in,
Yeah.
it's an exclusive club. You can't just walk into that club. It's like 50 grand, 100 grand a year to be a member.
Yeah.
And so I was sort of drawing a parallel between that and thinking, well, we have a club. We have our Sangha of high-class Vaishnavas and Gurus. And they're, even when Gurudev traveled and did his outreach, I remember one time in Hilo, it's this Vyasa Puja. And there's all sorts of people there, worldly people, a lot of hippies, and everyone's looking forward to the class, and Gurudev starts speaking. And, it was general, and then Gurudev started going higher and higher and higher. And before you know it, he's in the groves of Vrindavan. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to keep up, I'm struggling. I'm thinking, what are these new people going to be experiencing? So exclusivity for me isn't a problem so much. But the idea is that the leaders, like Gurudev, he could have stayed in Vrindavan. He could have stayed there, but he didn't. Because he had a mission to give the wealth that he had. And that's part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, is to distribute. It's not just to taste. He tasted in Gambhira, isn't it? He did taste, but he also distributed. So that's why one of Mahaprabhu's hands is up like this and one's down. One he's tasting, and the other one he's giving. So generally you see deities, you have some like this, like Gaur Gadadhar or they're both like this down. It means they're just giving. And then when they're like this, they're just tasting. And when they're like this, they're tasting and giving. So, I don't have a problem with devotees tasting. We're meant to taste, right? But then when do you go like this, and then when does it become like that?
So that's interesting. No, this is an interesting concept because I like exclusivity. We're definitely in an eclectic, exclusive, I'd say ultra-rich high-end club. And the wealth is not material, it's spiritual. And we were talking yesterday to one of the VCs, and he was talking to me about different tastes. He's a foodie, and he loves different classes of wine, etc., etc. I said the best wine is Charnamrita. And he wanted me to describe Charnamrita. He was receptive. And as a result of his receptivity, we went into the groves of Vrindavan. I was describing Charnamrita. And so you'd be surprised how receptive people are. So the question is, how do we channel just tasting? I tend to think that our Sangha has a bit of a disease of, I just want to taste Harikatha, right? However, what about the giving? Right? And there's a lot of people that are receptive. And I don't want to be that so exclusive. The best clubs are the ones where they showcase their ideas. Right? You have the G7 Club, Economic Forum, Davos. They're exclusive, but they're showcasing and influencing ideas, infrastructure, world, cities, state, politics. So they're doing this. They're tasting. Demons are tasting, right? They're tasting, and they're also influencing. That's their giving. Their giving is influencing. So Mahaprabhu is the golden avatar. He's tasting, but isn't he also...
Absolutely, he's distributing. That's why
distributing.
And some of his murtis are like this.
And I like to say, and I'm going to go back to Radha Krishna Temple with the Beatles, Prabhupada initiated a cultural revolution of influence. And in my opinion, his portfolio of companies, with the exception of the BBT, are utterly, and in the Gaudiya Math too, I'd say both groups are utterly failing in real influence at a level of Davos and G7. You don't see them, you see them at 2-star Marriotts or 3-star Marriotts. You don't see them at the top.
It goes back to, Vanashram Dharma is the platform, and Daiva Vanashram is also part of that platform. And so what is the role of someone like us? People would say, well, why are you going to that place?
Yeah.
And the point is that...
That's what I would pose and challenge.
The sannyasi ashram is the teacher of society. Mm-hmm. You have to be in society to teach society. Mm-hmm. Prahlad Maharaj said, don't go into a cave and perfect yourself. That's selfish. Mm-hmm. And so if you're helping society, you can't just give them something so lofty that they can't understand it. They don't have the language to assimilate the very basic tenets of the proposition. Mm-hmm. It shoots right over. Mm-hmm. Once you find common ground, common interests, you can build a rapport. They say, okay, for example, association is so important. We can agree on that?
Yeah.
Spiritual association, one of our most fundamental precepts.
Our friends that we made yesterday, you're like, vibrations
association.
Important.
Association.
They call it vibration.
How do you form new memories?
Yeah.
Association. That means you associate something you know with something you don't know. So unless we're in society, how would you provide an opportunity for people to form new understanding of spiritual subject matters? Therefore, the Vedas also teach all the material sciences. Life science, health, wellness, military, everything. All those fields of knowledge are given. Without the conclusion, it's incomplete and it's without value. However, that doesn't mean that the foundation isn't necessary. We talk about the palace of the Bhagavat, and the conclusion is there. But also, Swami Prabhupada came and he nirvasesha shunyavad pashyata deshatarane. He delivered the West from impersonalism and voidism, but he also was interested in impacting society. He wrote, these are the points for Indira Gandhi. He was interested in that field. Nixon. He was interested in that.
He wrote President Nixon.
And so we're being called upon to also serve that realm, because our Gurudev's desire is that that service is also performed within society.
Yeah.
If people want to enter the groves of Vrindavan, how are they going to have a chance to do that if they don't know that there's a possibility of that? And so if you're only preaching to the choir, you're creating a symphony but not releasing a record. It's like, yeah, you're great musicians, but nobody knows that there is music.
That's what I see. That's the sense enjoyment then. In my opinion, that's sense enjoyment. I'm sorry. I mean, I guess it's mixed bhakti. I don't know. When, it's like, the spiritual master leaves allegedly. For me, Gurudev never left. But when the spiritual master leaves allegedly, then I'm after the next. And I just want to I just want to experience a symphony. I'm not going to share the symphony, but then where's this adurya?
Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada said, wicked mind, what kind of a Vaishnava are you? For your own enjoyment, you're hiding in a room pretending to do bhajan. It's not Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada's message or mission. He said, go out. He said, if you need to, break Ekadashi today because you have an event to go to and you need energy to...
Well, for the record, we didn't break Ekadashi, but...
We didn't break it. It's funny, it wasn't Ekadashi. It wasn't Ekadashi. It wasn't Ekadashi.
We did not break Ekadashi, and that was a tough one, especially for me.
That's a good... Well, you can only break Ekadashi in the order of a spiritual master. Nowadays, we have technologies.
We do.
It's called avocados.
We have avocado.
The point is, Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada was so interested in preaching that he was willing to adjust in certain circumstances for the benefit of that. And if you look at his time, people who came to him very quickly, they were sent out to meet with the deans of the universities, to meet with the business magnates. There's many stories of his followers engaging in that sphere in the world.
Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada.
Yes.
His followers would meet with...
Yeah, he would send them out to do this.
Oh, wow.
Bhakti Hridaya Bhan Maharaj met with, met with the... Now, it's not that we're exclusively going towards that realm.
No, I get it.
But...
Well, then Prabhupada, time, place, and circumstance, he was like, who are the influencers of the day? And the influencers of the day happen to be the ladies and gents on the street.
My point is that if you want to present
it's cultural
the highest wisdom, Okay, take education. There's not only universities and doctorates of literature and professors. There's kindergarten teachers. And then there's pre-K. Your kids don't go to university. Mm-hmm. So in spiritual knowledge, if we're supposed to serve the spiritual needs of society, how can we expect to say, we have a university, you come to our university, and if you're not qualified to come to our university, then you're never...
If you can't cut it for par, you come for 1 month, screw it.
Where's our pre-K and K and primary? Mm-hmm. And so that's why Ved Vyas presented all of the Vedas, all of the Smritis, all of the Upanishads, all of the Puranas. And Mahaprabhu then brought everything. So if you were to say the role, see now, we lived in India and we're in the Swami order. So the question is, what's the duties of someone in our order? If it can't relate in any sphere of society except for the exclusiveness of the kunja,
the club, yeah.
How are we serving their spiritual needs? Or are we just not meant to?
I think we have to.
We're Vanashram.
A successful exclusive club
isn't
influences.
Vanashram isn't a sangha. Vanashram is society.
Yeah.
Prabhupada said society doesn't mean, okay, you're a laborer, you're a merchant. He said that's natural. Someone is naturally inclined towards administration or towards military or governance. Someone is naturally inclined towards art or labor. Someone is naturally inclined towards capital. Someone is naturally inclined towards teaching. Mm-hmm. The sannyas order is to help instruct people on all those different levels in their gradual upliftment. Mm-hmm. So if you're only trying to springboard someone, Gurudev would say, don't jump to the top of the tree. You have to help people climb up. I've seen that from Prabhuji. Prabhuji spends so much time dealing with the basic needs of people. And you build relationship with people and solve their basic needs. Then you can inculcate some spiritual practice and help them. But my practical mentors, Gurudev did it as well, but for me, living with Prabhuji for 15 years, 5-6 hours a day, just talking with people, addressing their needs. That doesn't mean Raganuga Bhakti, because that's not their need right now. Their need right now is, I'm going through this crisis, I need help. And so, why wouldn't we address those needs? Because otherwise, how are they going to have an opportunity to get to the university level if there's no pre-K, K, primary, and upper education?
Oh, for sure. I think the truth of the matter is that you're saying this now, but for many years, you were in the exclusive club.
A very exclusive club.
It's like Gurudev stayed in Vrindavan for forever, and
30 years, right?
Yeah,
35 years, yeah.
At least, and then when the order came from Mahaprabhu to go, and with the blessings of the Guru Varg, Gurudev, he started to manifest his Acharya Bhav, his Acharya Leela. I remember seeing Gurudev in India back in, he was already traveling around the world, right? So we got to meet him like in 96, 97, those early days. You'd see Gurudev sat in his room, he'd just have his longi on and a torn up, the VIP t-shirts, these Indian cheap quality t-shirts. Yeah. And they would always go at the shoulder, or they just get hold. They become the stitching.
The cricket news.
Gurudev wasn't looking at the cricket news.
Or somebody was.
I'm talking about Gurudev.
No, but it was on the left of his seat. Somebody was.
But the point is, they lived a simple life, and they didn't care. Like Gurudev would do his bhajan all morning, and then he'd do a program at night, but all local in Mathura.
Wow.
He didn't travel tons. And if you would see Gurudev at that time, you wouldn't, like in the modern world, you see they've got some bling, they've got a Ferrari, they're high rollers, they're suited and booted. You live in that world,
Gurudev was actually traveling quite a lot since 1947.
But not
did it in
outside. He
Mathura.
didn't leave the world. He didn't leave India.
But India also exists.
Right. No, but I'm saying
And it's a big country.
I'm trying to say he manifested his Acharya Leela globally, moving Paribrajaka Acharya all over the world. You know, then he was wearing his bandi, his turban. You know, and, you know, it's like Prabhuji now. You go to India, Prabhuji's just live. He's hiding. He's literally doesn't want to be recognized. He's sending everyone else out while the king is, you know, he's hiding in the kingdom as a server, as a vegetable cutter, as a kitchen hand, if you like. But the irony is that the glories of the high class Vaishnavas, you can't hide it, you know. Even if they're trying to hide it, eventually their glories come out, you know. So, you know, now the Vaishnavas are saying, go out, preach, you know. So obviously that's encouraged, you know. And he was protecting everybody many times from like, hey, let's get these guys qualified, let's, you know, work on do their soul work. And then now the time's come, it's like, he's cleaning out the kunj. You go here, Nepal, America, Brazil, you know.
Europe, yeah.
And everything's manifesting. So the success of that, and it was the same with us when in 2000, when Gurudev told me, okay, you go to San Diego. He said, buy an old church, establish Radha Govinda. So where's the power to, and we did that. I didn't have any money. I was by myself. Gurudev sent me with two crazy kids, who lasted about 3 days between them. And they were nutters. And we drove from Alachua, I think it was, across through Texas, got pulled by the cops, you know, in this rinky-dink van. And then within a few years, we had a prime property in Venice Beach, you know. And how was that possible? Because their order...
A beach house for Radha Govinda until they're going to their forest.
But even the church,
the
church was like, how do you find that?
Yeah,
you
and
know?
it was moving.
And when that church came to us, you know, and because it wasn't even on the market, okay, Krishna showed us that before it went on the market. When the banks found out that it was being sold, they were getting offers way above what, you know, they were trying to gazump us, you know. But fortunately, the owners believed in what we were doing. They even kept the church status. You know, the church
property tax exemption. Yes, church.
Yeah, but to grandfather us in so we could be a church. You know, the arrangement was there. I personally felt I didn't have to really do anything.
It was moving smoothly.
It just because it was empowered, and I was just like I was on the boat. You know, just trying to do my thing. So, you know, the empowerment's there. Like this that you're meeting the other day with the big wigs and the movers and shakers and his land in Ellenville and in New York State.
Yeah.
How that everything just manifested, you know. So
during COVID of all times.
During a tough time, So you know, all these things can go on, and the cooling is there for everyone. You know, to be part of that and how to do it in a fresh way. You know, you don't have to hammer the parking lots, and you know you can be intelligent in how we present. And if you're really connected and you make even a little endeavor, generally we find the environment, you know, Krishna arranges everything. Even actually when you are working the street and you're doing the books, Krishna, if you're Krishna conscious, then the people will come, you know.
One thing I'd mention about our continuing service to Srila Gurudev, which is Bhakta Bandhav mission, and I'm talking about the mood. It's a combination of the mood of Bhakta Bandhav Srila Gurudev, which is primary because he's we're creating a mission for him.
Yeah.
But it's including the mood of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who Gurudev always wanted included, who he always included. And so the expansionist mood of Swami Prabhupada with the exclusive mood of Srila Gurudev is what has brought us to this junction. And it's also the springboard towards our future.
I love this.
And
this is
Prabhupada said from the very beginning, he's like, I want the Krishna movement people engaged in all realms. Our mission isn't just to have people living in temples. we're not just an ecclesiastical order. We are part of every part of society, and we should serve within those levels of society as members of society, because otherwise, again, how do we meet people where they're at?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's wow. I now.
It's not ecclesiastical.
No, it's not. No, Proji's really pushing this.
We're no more member than your member or anyone else's member, and wherever they are.
This idea, which is actually it's organic. It's an awareness. It's not an idea. It's an awareness of the magical partnership between Prabhupada and Gurudev, Srila Maharaj, that basically, and it took me 2 decades to really discover this, and I'm still going through the journey of discovery of what is that magical partnership. And to your point, there is the mass market appeal that Prabhupada initiated, expanded, and it's a mass market. And then there's the exclusivity, right, of Gurudev in Mathura, where actually Prabhupada initiated the first sannyasi, Kirtananda Swami Bhaktipad, over there. He initiated and sent over Achyutananda to learn Archan, Kirtans, right? And so, and not just Prabhupada, but also other acharyas from other groups, Gaudiya Mats, sent their best of the best, their brahmacharyas. If it was Bhakti-Vibhava Puri Maharaj sending, Bhakti-Vacharya Vishnu Maharaj and others, they sent to be with Gurudev and train to be an ideal sevak and soldier and brahmachari, just like his Premananda Prabhu, like mother. And so that divine partnership of the front office and back office, kind of, operationally, that's magical. You got product development in the back office, the content, right? The sacred content, and then you got, and where did Bhaktivedanta, like, I'm a BBT guy. I served the BBT for my whole life. I still serve the BBT. The Bhaktivedanta book tours, the Bhaktivedanta purports, where do they come from? They come from a class of Bhaktivedantas. Where does Bhaktivedanta come from? Well, Bhaktivedanta is a byproduct of the interaction between Narayan Raj and Prabhupada. That's Bhaktivedanta. That's product development. That's content. And so, to your point, right, that's the content creation. That's the back office. And then now you have the mass marketing.
One thing that's
we're now coming into an age where it's the merger, the IPO and merger of that.
Of the two. One thing that's funny is that Gaudiya Mat people are really they're peeved that Prabhupada took the Prabhupada title. And ISKCON people were peeved that Gurudev gave the Bhaktivedanta title to his sannyasis. And they're thinking as if it's something that's like an impropriety. The fact is that the Bhaktivedanta title was from the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, especially Param Gurudev, given down.
Specific Param
Gurudev, and then Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and then there's all the group of Bhaktivedantas now. And so this idea, there was always, the idea of a parampara, of a lineage, is that it's a divine order, it's a divine desire, not a mortal conception.
And it's not so zigzaggy.
So it's Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, it's Swami Prabhupada, and it's our Gurudev, so it's a continuation. One thing, because we're sitting here in our Bhakta Bandhav West Coast HQ, and so something else I would like just to mention about the concept of Bhakta Bandhav is that it's coming from scripture, from a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, the source of the term. Because some people say it's Bhakti Bandhav, it should be Bhakti. The term comes from Sastra, from scripture. Krishna is speaking in a dialogue with Arjuna. Some of the most famous verses that refer to the saints or the bhaktas is in the same dialogue. We just didn't recognize this portion, where it says that the devotee is my heart and I'm in the heart of the devotee. I know no one but my devotee. They are my life. Krishna says that they are more dear to me than my own brother, Sankarshan, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. He said the devotees are, he said, I'm not in the hearts of the yogis. I'm not in the spiritual abode. Wherever my devotees are, I'm present with them. So in that same conversation, Krishna tells Arjuna that I am Bhakta Bandhav, which means the dearmost friend of my devotees, and the devotees are my dearmost friends. And then he says that I am the guru of my devotees, and my devotees are gurus of the world. What's the idea of Jagat Guru? Is Swami Prabhupada a guru just for Hare Krishnas?
No.
He influenced the culture through karma, through reincarnation, through vegetarianism. He influenced the world, and all those, his primary focus was Krishna consciousness. But by doing that, he's influencing the world. What does it mean to be a Jagat Guru? Jagat Guru doesn't mean just for your disciples.
I agree, yeah.
Gurudev he was given the title Yugacharya Brajacharya. That's not just for his disciples. Right now, Gurudev is Shiksha Guru of more disciples than his direct initiated disciples. And that's going to continue influencing the world. So my point here is that the idea of Bhakta Bandhav is not just to be an exclusive group. Gurudev is a world teacher. And therefore, and Swami Prabhupada, they are world teachers. Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, he is a world teacher. And his teaching is primarily the faith and the tradition and the Bhakti Yoga path. But it doesn't mean he doesn't have a message for the world. Because otherwise, also, how are you going to give an avenue for entrance to people who aren't directly interested? How are you going to get the message out there if you just want to convert every single person to your path? We don't have a message for someone who's not going to be converted. Christianity is only for Christians.
Yeah.
Islam's only for Muslims. Hinduism's only for Hindus. That's sectarian value. What's our message for people who don't share our values? And so, as a world teacher, Krishna says, I am the guru of my devotees, and my devotees are gurus of the world. They're primarily bringing you to the spiritual path. But it doesn't mean that everybody has to follow A, B, C, D exactly as you do, as a prerequisite for entrance into any of the knowledge tradition. They can't gain anything from it besides that. Unless you become a manjari, you're not allowed to learn from Gurudev. So I feel like the idea is we're serving a legacy of a lineage that is coming from Lord Brahma, the creator, from whom the Vedas manifested. And that's complete knowledge. And that knowledge system serves the needs of people on every level of development. That's the Veda. So we're not just teaching Raganuga Bhakti, Rupanuga Bhakti, we're teaching the Veda. And then we're teaching the conclusion of the Veda. Then we're Bhakti Vedantas. And we're focusing on the ultimate conclusion, but what do you do with somebody who's not interested in the ultimate conclusion? They have to have awareness that it exists. And if they have awareness of the tradition, and it's also serving their different levels of needs, then they can come to the place, ultimately, of having an understanding and hopefully at some point an appreciation for the conclusion. And I've discussed with a lot of the acharyas of you would say the second gen from Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada.
Yeah.
So Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada's disciples, and then their disciples who were bestowed the responsibility for carrying on the legacy. And when they speak...
So the Gaudiya Ma version of Prabhupada disciples.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
No, not Prabhupada disciples. Prabhupada disciples, yes. But those who are...
Disciples.
The model is different.
Oh, yeah.
ISKCON is a republic. Gaudiya Ma has become... Gaudiya Ma is like... it's like princes and kings. The king anoints a prince. It's that model. But when they speak, I've had long hours of conversation with them about the desire of Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada as he told their Gurudev and their Gurudev told them. And he said, our interest is not in converting people. If they're Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada served meat at the banquet in Mayapur. He hired cooks and they served mutton and chicken to the governor.
Maharaj like, what? What? No way.
That was, and he said, if they have not satisfied their hunger, how will they hear our message? That's the mentality of Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada. And so the question is, what's the utility?
Well,
utility is the principle.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's real ahimsa. Real ahimsa is not really,
it's relativism. You're a vegan, you're a good person. And you eat meat and you're a bad person.
I mean,
that's all material duality, good and evil.
You're going to violently, fork the meat eater. It's like, come on. That's so,
it's a low-level thinking.
It is low-level thinking, yeah. No, we don't do that.
It's condemning, it's a form of condemning the sinner instead of saying ignorance, avidya, that is the root cause of suffering.
Yes.
And sin is just a byproduct that causes additional suffering.
Yes.
Sin isn't the problem. Being a sinner, we're not trying to find sin in sinners.
Yes, yeah.
We're trying to root out the root cause of the problem, which is ignorance. If they eat meat or don't eat meat, if they drink wine or don't eat wine, what's that to us?
No, it's irrelevant. It's about...
Let them hear the message.
It's about real wellness.
That's the mood of Swami
Real
Prabhupada.
wellness.
And that's why if you listen to Gurudev speaking on Swami Prabhupada, he said, there has never been an acharya like him. When Gurudev glorifies him, he says, there has never been an acharya like him. Most acharyas want qualified people to become disciples. Prabhupada delivered the Jagas and Madhais. That means those who are suffering the most, but he didn't say, oh, you're a sinner. Oh, you're a homosexual. Oh, you're a drug addict. He didn't care. He'll make homosexuals gurus. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
Because the message is more potent, and that condition that person's in is secondary. Primary is how to uplift that living entity. Like, for example, in the Gita, Krishna says a truly wise person doesn't see whether you're a dog eater or a dog or an elephant or a Brahmin. So does your guru think, oh, you're a homosexual or you're a freaking transgender or whatever? What does that matter? The soul is the soul. What are those things? They don't matter. And so in the same way, whether someone eats meat or doesn't eat meat, what does it matter? It's all relativity. We're not relativists. We're transcendentalists. And so unless we can sit down at a table as a transcendentalist, as a spiritualist, without this mentality like you're a sinner, you're a bad person because you don't follow my standards and my morality. All this relative morality it comes out with the wash.
Yeah, then how can we do this? We're just doing this.
And he said, Bhaktivinoda Vishwambar, he said, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he said, show me the emphasis on whether you're eating meat or not.
Who said this?
Bhaktivinoda Vishwambar said, where's it written there? How many times he was, you're bad, you do this, you do that. He said, I'm coming to teach you Krishna Prem, divine love. And I embrace the dog eater and the Brahmin as equal. That's the songs we sing says, Chandale Brahmane Kore Koratale. When the Brahmin, the high-class priest, who is following very strictly all the rules and regulations, embraces the dog eater as one, and they roll on the ground in ecstasy of divine love, that is the glory of Mahaprabhu. And so it's not to say that one shouldn't give up those habits. However, I was reading this today in our interfaith group about the modes of nature. The mode of goodness conditions you to material happiness. It's a stronger shackle. 14th chapter Gita, verses 5 to 18. The mode of goodness conditions you to happiness. When the living entity enters material nature, you become conditioned by the modes of nature. And in the mode of passion, you're conditioned to enjoying the fruits of your work. In the mode of ignorance, you're conditioned to indolence and all those traits that lead you to suffering in darkness. That's all bondage. So bringing people to the platform of goodness, yes, that's helpful, but that's not our ultimate objective. And Mahaprabhu didn't come to deliver those in mode of goodness. Our Gurudev didn't come to deliver those in the mode of goodness. We're all in the conditioned stage of life. And how do you enable, basically, unless there's an awareness of what you have as an offering, then how will people take advantage of that offering? And Krishna spoke on the battlefield of the Kurukshetra.
On many morning walks, Prabhupada would say the same. He'd say, "We're not in a sattva gun business. We're not in that kind of like mode of goodness business." Because people were like, "Can we do this for society and this and that? And let's influence." It's like, no, we're going to address all of it, and that was mercy.
It's a very interesting balance. We want people to be vegetarian, of course. But we're not so attached to it that we say, okay, unless you're a vegan. I was reading a quote just the other day because there's an argument now going on between vegans and vegetarianism. There's a big argument. And I'm reading, it's part of the privilege of proofreading all of Gurudev's spoken words in public is that, we're proofreading, we're on volume 50 now, is you could actually see the corpus of his entire thought as his teaching to the West. Because if he didn't say it in 15 years in every one of his lectures, he came here to give that. The point is that he said the cow will be benefited, because they're saying, the cows are giving milk and then they're being slaughtered later. Can we offer this to Krishna? And Gurudev said the cow will be benefited. And we're ultimately not interested in material morality. Most people become caught up with that, and it's like the ecclesiastical thing.
Well, it's a matrix of
in
playing
Judaism,
chess with yourself.
I speak with.
You're just kind of like,
I speak with.
You know how Prabhupada he cut through the whole thing when because people are coming from different in the material world. Everyone's got their angle, right? They have a lens. Sridhar Maharaj calls it a lens of prejudice. Actually, a material lens where you're seeing things in a certain way. The nationalist is saying, I'm a nationalist. The globalist is saying, I'm a globalist. It's better than a nationalist. But Sridhar Maharaj says, you've got to transcend globalism, and get rid of all those lenses. But what interests me is, what comes to mind is that Srila Prabhupada, one thing is, you're saying, how do we approach this person, that person? He said, you know what he said his secret weapon was, Prabhupada?
What?
No? He said,
Halava.
Mahaprasadam.
Mahaprasadam, I remember, yes.
He said, it's my secret weapon.
Yeah, Mahaprasadam.
Because people just think it's a milk sweet. People, we used to do these, Nagar Sankirtan and give out sweet bowls.
Sweet bowls, yeah.
And at the farmer's market and stuff, people go, oh, these sweet bowls. They'd go absolutely crazy. They'd eat a sweet bowl. And they just think it's an ordinary...
I could have 6 of those.
Like milk and sugar and some butter. And but actually, it's been offered as sanctified food.
It's a magical weapon,
and that changes people's consciousness. So
it's a bioweapon.
A bioweapon. That's a real bioweapon.
It's a bioweapon.
What it does,
it's a spiritual bioweapon.
It affects you on a
affects your spiritual
biology.
It does.
It does, and that's something that came to mind is we don't have to, if someone can't take the message, they've got kirtan, like when we're doing. Nagar Sankirtan, that's distribution. What's more powerful? Intellectually we might be able to apply in a certain way, which is essential. But for everyone, we distribute Nam Kirtan, and that Kirtan Ras is for everybody.
That's everybody.
And, you'd see people who were, like really demoniac, that were in the vicinity, they go like this. They knew. They didn't want to let it in. And even sometimes you distribute food, Mahaprasad. And people go, don't eat it, it's in the food. It's in the food. So the
bioweapon.
The demoniac,
bioweapon.
They know, they know that there's something in that. And they're right, there is. It's Krishna Prem's in that prasadam, So in one sense, we do have something for everyone. And if they can't digest it, because, why are there so many different religions? There's only one God, right? But Srila Gurudev explained that the reason there's different manifestations and deities is because people are of different natures, and some will be attracted to Shivji. Isn't it the particle accelerator down somewhere in Australia?
Yeah.
CERN, or is it
Europe.
CERN?
Europe.
They've got a massive
Nataraj
Shivji, like 50 foot high, Murti of Lord Shiva, who's the god of destruction, right? So they got their thing going. Someone else is worshipping, Jesus, Yahweh, Allah, everyone's got their own take, But ultimately, when all those, basically, actually, as Srila Maharaj explains that, everyone's living in a world of illusion in the material sphere. It's a world of misconception, where we're taking material reality as real when it's actually illusory. And he says, we have to transcend nationalism, globalism, all the isms, and then we get to Godhead. And he said, even then, you have to when the conception even the conception of Krishna will be removed, of Godhead,
God.
of opulence, that God is, the order, the supplier, the controller, the destroyer. He said that will be removed and you'll end up in Vrindavan. So, how are all the want all of us removed? Because most people are living in the world. This is real. Veganism is real. Vegetarianism is real. Me eating all this stuff is just all in the jailhouse of the material world. And what do we care if someone's position in the jailhouse is, he's high up here in a mansion somewhere, and this guy's living under a tarp.
We're attached to having
in a shanty town, and we're seeing that relativity when the Acharya is just he's transcended that material vision. He's living in and basically Sri Maharaj says, when that goes, you will see everywhere. You won't see distinction. You'll see Krishna everywhere. Self-determination is a high thing. That's where a lot of people are at, to be self-determination. You've got the collectivists, there's no self-determination. It's like, it's all one. It's basically different levels of like Mayavad and Brahmavad, and the Krishna conscious is the ultimate solution. It's a chincha beta beta tapa. It's oneness and difference. And, so even when someone can transcend material vision, then they come to God consciousness in opulence and greatness. And then that goes, when the God conception goes, you're left with Krishna in Braj. That's the exclusive club. When you can get free from material misconception to divine reality, and then beyond that to Vrindavan.
If I could put in two things. One, to go to the Kunj for a moment. When we sing Mangala Arati, which is at 4:30 in the morning, we're singing to the divine couple in a very romantic mood, serving their romance. And then afterwards we have a choice. And so giving up the God conception, we also give up the association of God. What does that mean? We have a choice. Do you go to Jabat with Radharani? Do you go to Nandagram with Krishna? And so what level is that conception? Which path are you going to choose? It's like,
wow.
Which path are you going to choose? Well, first of all, get to that position.
Well,
Coming through the door. Take the sweet ball.
After sweet ball.
Take the sweet ball. Would you like the red sweet ball or the blue sweet ball?
They're both heading in the same direction.
Okay. I mean, after Mangalarti, I was asleep underneath the altar. Now I'm like thinking, where the heck did I end up?
Well, their name includes Ananda, so that's a hint. and divine love. And then the other thing I want to add to it is that Gurudev would often speak to more of a general audience, and his presentation was very consistent. And he would always address the issue that he said, we've made so many advances in so many spheres, medical, communication, transportation, the kitchen, things like that. Gurudev would list them, but he said, what is lacking? And he said, for some reason or another, our natural love has diminished. And he said, a wife has a separate account, our trust, our faith, our love has diminished. And I feel like sometimes, that's just one point I'll make, but I also feel like sometimes we are confined in our understanding because of the relative, subjective nature of our experience with Guru. So we met Guru when he was in that condition, and then he evolved to that condition, then he went into that condition. And unless we study the life of our Guru in whole, along with the metaphysics of the principle of Guru and the higher knowledge of, everyone has a different darshan of Guru. That's Prabhupada's introduction to Guru Darshan. Everyone has a different darshan of Guru. Everyone has a different darshan of God, a different vision, idea of God.
And it's not just a photo op.
So the idea of Gurudev is that, for example, in his articles in the middle of the 50s and the early 60s, he was addressing social topical issues strongly.
In the 60s?
Yes.
The Hindi. These are in
Gurudev,
These are in
Swami
Hindi.
Prabhupada, Bhakti Pragyan Kesava Goswami Maharaj said, I want you in charge of North India to preach our message to North India. Bhama Goswami Maharaj, Trivakam Goswami Maharaj, they were all like delegated areas of concern so that they could address the needs of that region. Gurudev was very involved. Gurudev was involved in the 4 or 5 different groups that was trying to impact social change. It wasn't activism so much, but the idea was he was a member of that order in society, and he was giving his input. If you read those articles, it wasn't Rupanuga Bhakti in those articles. But if people are interested in his message and they start to follow him, how long is it going to be until Gurudev's telling you that, look, all these things are material and mundane, what's in it for you? Because ultimately that's our message. Look, you're trying to influence the world. That's just an extension of a form of egoism. I want to be an influencer. So what? What about the value of your life? You can be the richest person or the poorest person, you're still going to suffer and die. What's the benefit for anybody? So the idea is that Gurudev is giving a teaching and it can help society, but really it's still basically like Christ would say, teach a man to fish. He said, I'm fishing men. I will teach you to fish men. Some people need to eat and some people need spiritual development and knowledge. But the teacher doesn't just give one form of teaching. And if you read these articles of Gurudev, and if you look at... Param Gurudev is a good example. Okay, let's go back one level to Param Gurudev. This is a story we hear many times from Prabhuji. And Gurudev himself discussed this. He said that Param Gurudev would often sit and just talk to barristers, lawyers, doctors, politicians, and they would just hang out with him. They would talk for hours. And Gurudev would get up to leave. And Param Gurudev said, he called him, he said, sit down.
Really?
He said, when you're in the sun, you absorb the sun rays.
Wow.
Doesn't matter what they're talking about. Param Gurudev would do that. And Prabhupada would do that a little bit as well. But Param Gurudev was known for that. He would basically hold court like a sage and like a minister to the kings. But it's kind of like being the king and the minister.
Yeah.
And people would sit and they would talk about law and talk about society.
Like we did yesterday.
Gurudev said, well, this is not a spiritual subject matter. And he said, if anyhow people get to be in the presence of the sun, they get energy from the sun.
Wow.
Doesn't matter what the sun's talking about.
Wow.
That's why I say people have an idea that Harikatha is an intellectual transfer of information. It's not. It's a transfer, it's a potency.
It's a
potency.
Our friend called it vibration.
It's not even vibration, it's direct potency.
But
Sun energy.
has a vibration there.
It has a vibration, so different kinds of potency have different kinds of flavors and moods. But in scripture it says, Satam, the discussions, the discourses of the saints is how I infuse my potency in people. And so primarily that is through Harikatha, but not exclusively. Param Gurudev wouldn't. Now the interesting thing is, Param Gurudev wouldn't get too far into it. He was mostly just kind of holding court.
It was a preview.
He would talk a little bit. And Gurudev said, you're not barely talking. He said, it doesn't matter. It's just the presence.
So it's a preview.
If you look at these old pictures of Param Gurudev, you can see his gravitas and his stature. People have this idea that we're supposed to be Babajis in Radhakund, putting, are you wearing white tilak or gray tilak? You must not be as advanced as me because I'm wearing gray tilak. Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada was completely opposed to this conception.
Yeah, I'm not as advanced and being crazy too.
Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada's vision was he was creating an order in a lineage to help the world by giving his message. But also, if you look at the teachings of Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, it wasn't every day he's talking about how to become a mandri. And Gurudev, if you read his articles from the 60s, in the 90s, in the late 80s, when he's speaking to people who are supposed to be gurus of an institution, then he's telling them, look, you're supposed to be a doctorate of literature in this field of Braja, you're a Rupanuga. And so you don't know any of this stuff, and you're going to go and be taught by the Babajis in Radhakund who don't practice proper moral behavior. You need this knowledge.
Gurudev was saving one of Prabhupada's portfolio companies, yeah.
But Gurudev, I'm telling you, from the moment he joined, it's in Param Gurudev's biography and in Guru Darshan, within months he was out meeting people and preaching where they were at. And Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada said the same thing. He said, unless we go to people and even, he said, beg from them. If you can look in the Puranas and the scriptures, there's hundreds of accounts of the sages going to people, even to kings, and saying, I need to speak with you, and I don't have time for you, I need to speak with you. And they would give their lesson to them, and it was spiritual knowledge. But if you look at the more ancient versions of these traditions, Look at Lord Ram's leela. We all talk about Ram Raja, the kingdom of Lord Ram. He was the king, and he was surrounded by sages who instructed him and who lived very simply and humbly. That's the idea of the order that we are entering. Our service is not just to cater to the needs of a like I've been thinking about this. Okay, it's like so we're going to our 26th annual festival. How many times do you need to hear about Rupa Nuga Bhakti before practicing it? And so at a certain point, it's like you're oversaturated with information with zero transformation. How much transformation is there?
I totally agree. I'll tell you right now. I mean, that's the one thing. I went up to 1996 to 97 to Badger, and I'll be candid. I'll be off the hook. What turned me off was it seemed like a Babaji exclusive club. And I was
96.
Like, 97.
97.
97. Okay. Everybody came up to me.
In Badger.
Badger. I went up 97. Everybody's coming up to me. I'm not going to name names. But some ladies in white came up to me. Who's your guru? I'm like, what? Prabhupada's my guru. What are you talking about? That's all I know is Prabhupada. He's the gold son.
He's an early adopter Ritvik.
Oh yeah, I was totally early. My father was like, early adopter Ritvik. I'm proud of it. Yeah. And we're Prabhupada disciples. That's all I knew. All I knew was BBT and Prabhupada. And I was like, well, who are you to come to me like that? You guys are up in the mountains doing nothing. I was pretty offensive, okay, I admit. But I'm a guy of action. I need production. The way I was raised in Prabhupada's family was unless you were producing for the guru, you were not a disciple of the guru. So for me, I look at it's meritocracy. What are you doing for your guru? And who is your guru? Is he the emperor? Is he the king of kings? Or he's a duke? I'm going to serve the king of kings. I go to the top. I'll associate, I'll hang out with dukes, duchesses, and princes, and I'll hang out with them, but I'm going right to the top. I want 1% of the 1%. That's my style. So then I hung out over there, and I left. Then, the way I connected with Gurudev, actually, with Srila Narayana Maharaj, was I was at the BBT, and I was hearing about book orders from San Diego. And come back to Jaga Maharaj, and it was interesting. I saw these book orders. I was like, who's this? Radha Govinda, Gaudiya Math? What's this? Why are they ordering Prabhupada's books? Who is Gaudiya Math ordering Prabhupada's books? And then I heard at the BBT, they're just not ordering Prabhupada's books. They're also helping print the original books of Prabhupada. And I was working with Hansaduta and Bhagavan, who are original trustees of the BBT. And I was like, wait, they're not just ordering books from BBT, but they're also doing. They're like, they're sponsoring print runs. I'm like, Srila Narayana Maharaj is sponsoring print runs of Prabhupada's books? Oh.
The old school books before they changed them, right?
Old school books. And I was like, stock of this Badger Festival stock just went up to the New York Stock Exchange level. For me, that's an uplisting. That's like an uplift. I'm like, wow, this is action. I like this. Okay, I want to connect. And then I started connecting. And then the way I started learning Gurudev's relationship with Prabhupada and the history. For me, Prabhupada was 1966 to 77. And I think in our own Sangha, we think of Gurudev 1996, 2010. But there's decades before that, which I discovered with Prabhupada and Gurudev, their sacred partnership, and decades thereafter of how that sacred partnership manifested and grew together. And similarly, in Bhakta Bandhav, with Gurudev, there's actually a sacred partnership with Premananda Prabhu that people just kind of like, no, I know Gurudev, I know Narayana Maharaj, I knew him 2000 to 2010, that's enough. I know Narayana Maharaj, 96, he never spoke on some of these topics, or this or that, and like 1980 to 85, he was hip on this. How do you know that, Vishvambar? Well, Prabhuji talks about it. It's like, well, who's Premananda Prabhu? Dude, he's like the Gurudev of Prabhupada because he was with them as a sacred partner from 1970, early 70s onwards.
Not the Gurudev of Prabhupada, like the
Gurudev and Prabhupada sacred partnership.
Yeah.
The Gurudev and Prabhupada sacred partnership is Prabhuji and Gurudev sacred partnership. There's a sacred partnership. There's senior partners and junior partners. Okay? In every dynamic, Prabhupada's a senior partner and Gurudev's a junior partner. That's a sacred partnership. Gurudev's a senior partner, and Prabhu's a junior partner. If you see the way they related, just like people got to see how Prabhupada and Gurudev related. Gurudev was Shiksha disciple, but there was also a sacred partnership with Gurudev and Prabhupada, where they were exchanging ideas, strategies, how to help, right? And the same thing with, I had a good fortune to witness myself, Gurudev and Premananda Prabhu, because right when I connected with Gurudev, it was the same year I connected with Premananda Prabhu, and I saw a sacred exchange of not equalness, but collaboration. And I immediately see, oh, the King of Kings, they have their dukes, they have their kings, but then they got their own secret, sacred, that's sacred. There's the entourage, there's the medicine men, and there's the secretary and the treasurers and everything else, which I was one of the treasurers, I was a legal team, I was part of the medicine team, all that stuff. It's external, but then there's an internal team that's like discussing internal stuff. What's going on back at the mothership? The sacred partnership of the next moves, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, what's happened in the last 35 years, in the last 40 years. That's perspective. And I didn't get that perspective of Gurudev and Prabhupada until later. And I was quick then, I was sensitive to get that perspective with Gurudev and his sacred entourage.
One quick thing. Part of the criticism towards the external manifestation of Prabhupada's mission, part of it, is that it's becoming very Hindu-centric.
Yeah.
And Asian, Indian, American-centric.
Yeah.
And if you look back towards Swami Prabhupada's writings that are controversial, the most controversial in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's when he's discussing the fact that in his opinion, his observation, you could say, the focus of Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada was outreach of the Sankirtan movement beyond the borders of India. And he felt like people were just going to the West as part of the popularity of the image of having gone to the West to come back and use that in India.
By the way, Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Maharaj about these purports. It's not my observation. It's a fact.
Yes.
So Prabhupada dug his heels deep.
So this is very interesting because the idea was, Prabhupada was saying that Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada wanted this to be a world religion. It's a world faith, not just Indian faith or go to the West for your street cred in India.
Not a regional.
That's what he was saying. And that was cultural. That's the same thing Mahaprabhu said, actually the whole world. Now the thing is...
So it's not a regional, to clarify, not a regional cultural experience. Okay.
So now the criticism towards the preaching in the West is that it's become very regional within the global sphere.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking for a specific subset. So in other words, it's
Hindu-centric at 2-3-star hotels.
It's veering away from presenting it to the world audience.
I totally agree.
And so if we also continue in that same venue, you could say, in that same angle, same vein, then how are we serving the greater equation? How are we serving the will of our gurus? And so it's hard because you have to serve multiple
stakeholders.
You have to serve multiple needs.
Yeah.
But the point is, you shouldn't put all your energy in serving only these needs, but nothing in these other needs. And I'm just saying, Prabhupada's criticism towards sections of the Gaudiya Math was that you didn't really embody the spirit of Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, which was go out throughout the whole world and preach this message.
And I didn't know that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada and even Keshav Maharaj, Parama Gurudev, Bhakti and Keshav Maharaj, I wasn't aware that they would hold court in that style, which is a style of exchange and collaboration I'd like to be in, right? For me, at that level, it's more, to your point, it's a presence. You're holding court. It's not one way from the Vyasa sign like this.
If you were to bring into Buddhism into it, okay, does the Dalai Lama only have an opinion on how to practice Buddhism? People go to him for his opinion on topical issues.
Yeah.
And so what's the equivalent of that in our sampradaya? Is there? Why not? Are we inferior? Do we not have an opinion? I do interfaith discourses, and a lot of times people are like, I don't have an opinion on that, I don't have an opinion on that. And these are like very relevant questions. I have no idea. Well, why not? You're either not well versed enough or your scriptures don't deal with that subject matter. So the point is, there's a very strong, clear, concentrated focus with Mahaprabhu. And he's preaching Rag Bhakti, and that's our focus. But that doesn't mean we don't hand out an arm to lift people up from where their situation, to give them a potential opportunity to reach the top of the tree and get the fruit.
You know, one funny thing's there that in Prabhupada's time, it was mentioned in Manu Samhita.
Manu Samhita?
Yeah, Manu Samhita is basically
What's that?
It's the rules for
Codes
mankind.
for society.
Okay.
You know?
Oh, is that in the Bhagavatam, Manu Samhita?
No, it's a
This is on
separate
Shastra.
script, so Shastra.
But it's basically, you know, Bhagavatam is exclusive. That's the exclusive club. 10th Canto, Uber exclusive, you know, and who's accessing.
Uber Black exclusive.
So then, you know, so that's one side. But like in the world of like, most people are concerned with the world they're living in, their communities, you know. Like that chap yesterday was saying, you know, how do you solve homelessness, you know?
Yeah.
Especially in San Fran, it's like a big question. So most people are into that, and just by you know, saying how are we going to reach these people. And at that time with Prabhupada, they were, like for example, one rule in the Manu Samhita, one law, is that if you cut down one tree, you should plant 3 more.
Oh.
Sustainability.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a resource, it's a tree, there's gazillions of them, but the rule is, God's law, it was a Manu, right? Coming from Manu. The rule is, if you cut a tree down, but if you cut one, you're going to plant 3 more to replenish what you cut down, because they take time to grow. So someone said to Prabhupada, should we read Manu Samhita? You know, I read a bit of it, and I was like, oh, we should get into this. And then then someone had asked Prabhupada that, and he said no, because if you read Manu Samhita, then you're bound to have to follow all the rules. Right? So, you know, the worldly stuff, because as devotees, we follow Bhagavatam. So we have our rules, you know, no intoxication, no meeting, controlled sex life, no intoxication. No, those are
speculation, gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, so we have our general premise. But it was interesting that probably you'd think, like from what we're having this discussion, well, let's throw Manu Samhita in there. Let's help people and say, yeah, in Manu. And I'm kind of still attracted to brushing up on some Manu Samhita, and because it's relevant.
Basically, Vaishnav Sharia.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like, Vaishnav Sharia. I know.
It's pretty hardcore.
That's pretty, okay.
You know, and...
But then why didn't Prabhupada encourage that? Probably time, place, and circumstance?
But he said no, because like basic, you know, it's like...
Once you do it, then you got to have integrity and follow through.
Yeah, and like in
so
the time...
it's an
here's another
thing.
example. Here's another
don't
example.
open up certain things.
In the 60s, there was, in America, they had this... I don't know if it was a whistleblower, but it came into the public about how they refine sugar, right? And apparently they use animal bones in the refining process.
Early 60s, yeah.
Yeah. And so then when it was at the FDA or the government, the feds found out, and they at one point they shut down sugar production because they wanted to get a hold on what was going on. And then that news sort of filtered into society that they're using that, and devotees are vegetarians, but we eat tons of sugar, and Thakurji gets, you know, bucket loads of sugar every day. So one devotee said to Prabhupada, he said, they're using animal bones in the refining the sugar, you know, and Prabhupada said, you know, he said, everything is contaminated in Kali Yuga.
Everything's contaminated.
And he goes, but Prabhupada, you know, and they were in some area, there was some, and Prabhupada grabbed the chapati, sprinkled some sugar in it, and shoved it in the guy's
There
you know?
you go, dude.
So,
everything's contaminated.
So, like, you know, the point is, if you get too much into the relativity, which probably Manu Samhita is in that realm, you know,
it's not
the Acharya is saying everything's contaminated. And one of the great things that I always, you know, hold close to what Prabhupada, one of the things Srila Prabhupada said was, you know, people are arguing this and presenting that, and you just say, we say to them, yes, you're right. Now accept this. So wherever people, yes, our answer to them, Prabhupada is saying, our answer is yes. Now, because that's what they want to hear. They just want to be validated You know?
Most
and
of
then
the,
he's just like, yes, it's true. Now accept the school of Chaitanya, the Krishna conception, you know.
basically, a lot of this Manu Samhita and all these scriptures are dealing with civilization, which is concerned with the realm of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending.
Got it.
And then the Bhagavatam says this is just glorified animal life. And so the idea is that our spiritual knowledge doesn't just concern that. That's not really spiritual
So
knowledge.
that's really material. That's a high-end
it's-
material science.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
high-end
Yes.
material science.
And so, therefore,
Which is
the higher sages can say,
Davos should
you don't
be,
need to.
you know, Klaus Schwab should be reading Manu Samhita,
Yeah.
not feeding everyone opening cricket and locust factories and putting cricket flour in your chips.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's really...
that's someone who should be reading Manu Samhita,
totally.
you know?
That's cool. That's cool. Oh, I may read it, actually. You got me. I mean, that's... that's you know,
Well, wait till-
Harry Potter and that.
Wait till you stumble on the Garuda Purana.
Oh, there you go.
There's another one.
Harry Potter and that and Garuda Purana. There you go.
All right, well,
Thus ends.
so
Thus
much,
ends the
so much
reading.
service to do.
Oh, it's 12 o'clock.
But you made a nice facility here, Vish, you know? This Bhakta Bandhav.
Yeah, Bhakta Bandhav Jaga Puri. Premanand Prabhu manifested it. He said, what did he say? He told
Embassies.
me a few acres, a few stories, not far from airport, like half hour. I'm like, that's impossible. But Premanand Prabhu instructs it. That means some divinity power happens, and combine that with some good luck and banking and some discounts here and there, and boom, there you go.
Oh, it's a great facility.
Modern temple.
It's a modern temple.
It's an exclusive club, though.
It is very exclusive. It's invite only. Bhakta Bandhav sannyasis are the ambassadors. Prema Prabhu is the son. That's really just divinely bringing in the spiritual water from the Seva Kunj through our acharyas, really. Right? Sprinkling in the prashadam, the tournaments, and everything.
What did Prabhu used to say, like an outpost? You used to call it outstation?
Outpost.
Did you say outstation?
I think he said outpost.
Yeah, outpost.
That's what they call Nepal.
Outpost. If I could wrap a bow on it, an image is very interesting. The sun is Krishna in this case, but it's also Radharani, the divine Shakti. And the sun, being a fire entity, collects water and then distributes the water through the clouds, which is very interesting. And the guru principle is the water, and the soul, the spirit, is the lotus. The sun is called the friend of the lotus. So one of the names of the sun is the friend in Sanskrit, the friend of the lotus. But yet the lotus, in this case the sun represents God. The lotus cannot survive unless it's in the water. You take it out of the water, it withers. This is a verse in scripture. So you need the guru to support you, to mentor, to give you it's almost like a mother, right? You're living the womb, and the sun gives you the energy to grow. But if you look at the whole system, it's where is the guru, where is the God, where is the soul, where does one start and one end? Because the sadhu is also described to be like the sun, because he collects the water and moves it and distributes it. So that's why it's also in the first verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita, it said that Lord Chaitanya, he manifests as the guru. It's his energy. We say Shakshad Haritvena and we focus on the guru. Rather than thinking Shakshad Haritvena, guru is simply the medium to God. So we Shakshad Haritvena, worship the guru. No, worship God, and yet the lotus only receiving sunlight will wither. It needs the guru. Therefore, kintu prabhoya eva priyatasya. Therefore, because the guru is so dear to God, he is worshipable like God. And so the idea is we get caught up in this thing or that thing or this thing or that thing, but the ecosystem of spiritual life and the agents of spiritual life use the sun energy, the sun metaphor. Why is the sun moving water? Why is fire moving water to nurture something that is connected to earth?
Yeah.
And in this way, the living entity is being helped to blossom in its consciousness towards the absolute. And so, where is the sun? Who is the water? The sun for us is Brahma Gayatri, and we say, oh, the sun is God. But actually, if you were to ask Krishna, you would say the sun is Radharani. So it's Advaya Gyan. But the idea is that therefore we take shelter of our gurus, Therefore, we understand our gurus as mediums of Krishna, and we understand Krishna is not alone, but with Sri Radha. And that's why we end up with the divine couple as the background for a forum of titans of industry in its rightful place.
Yeah.
Seva Kunj they're in their rightful place. That's why Prabhupada was so bold. There's an interesting tandem between the junior partners and the senior partners. Prabhupada says they're London Ishvar and Paris Ishvar. And Gurudev said, I don't want to hear they're London Ishvar and Paris Ishvar. It's just different moods. It's the water and the sun.
Yeah.
Who has different mood at different times. Radharani and Krishna argue all the time. It doesn't stop them being the divine couple.
It's okay. It's okay.
So it's just an interesting idea. The point is that Seva Kunj, they are the Lord, they are the divine goddess, the divine Lord. They are Shakti Shaktiman. You know what someone told me? Okay, I think this was Daniel. Anyway, I'm not getting to name drops too much, but the point is, have you been to Konark? No, he said, have you been to the Sun Temple? I said, yeah, Konark. He said, that's cool. I'd love to go. And I said, yeah, that's connected to Sri Radha. Okay, now we have a platform of understanding. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go to Nepal. Why? Because people are interested in these ancient traditions and technologies. And so, unless you go into that forum.
Not long enough plane trip for some of my friends. Then they could. You got to land over there. Nepal's a little rough. Helicopter.
Yeah, landing strip. Right?
Yeah, landing strip over there. But that's a good idea, Maharaj.
The sun and the water. The sun fills back up the lake. So the guru is the water God. Is the guru God? The guru is the guru. He's not God. But the sun is the one giving water to the lake, and he's also taking. It's the same thing in Raya Ramananda Sambad. Mahaprabhu, they're trying to debate about who's getting the credit, right?
Yeah.
It's like this argument about who gets the credit. And that's a deep conversation, because ultimately Krishna came to learn from Radharani's maidservants and friends. Krishna came to learn from them. But also he's God and he knows everything. But he came to experience it through the agents. That's why Krishna says the devotees are my heart. And so those devotees, those are the real Maharajas.
So that's why it's very important we don't get stuck into a loop of Prabhupada and Gurudev had like discussions and debates, but they loved each other, whatever it may be. A quote unquote appearance of a difference in opinion, but it's like, what do you, London Shore, this is just a matter of taste. I mean, I got, you and I are brothers. I like spicy pizza with pesto. You prefer spicy pizza with tomato sauce. So be it.
As long as we both like pizza. We can agree on pizza, okay?
We're on pizza.
We can agree? We agree? Pasta. Tostadas.
There you go.
Hare Krishna. Dandavad Pranam.